No one claimed her, so the quiet cowboy did. Not as a rescue, as a promise. The gunshot cracked through the saloon before Jack Morgan even pushed through the doors. He stepped inside to find a woman standing over a bleeding man, a smoking revolver in her trembling hand. The crowd backed away from her like she carried plague. Nobody moved to help. Nobody spoke. They just stared. Jack recognized the man on the floor. Lyle Brennan, a cattle rustler who'd been terrorizing homesteaders for months. The woman looked barely 20, her dress torn at the shoulder, her face bruised. Brennan had tried something. She'd ended it. Sheriff Dawson arrived, took one look at the scene, and reached for the woman's arm. She flinched, but didn't resist as he pulled the gun from her grip. Jack watched her eyes go empty, like she'd already accepted whatever came next. The trial lasted an hour. Self-defense was obvious to anyone with eyes, but the judge made it clear what happened to women who killed men in his town. He gave her a choice: 30 days in jail or leave immediately with a husband, any man willing to claim her. The courtroom went silent. Men looked at their boots. Wives pulled their husbands closer. The woman stood alone at the front, her hands folded, her chin up despite everything. Jack saw pride there, the kind that doesn't break easy. He stood without thinking it through. Every head turned. The woman's name was Clara Hayes. She had no family, no home, nothing but the clothes she wore and a life she'd been running from. Jack learned this on the wagon ride to his ranch, though she barely spoke above a whisper. She sat rigid beside him, watching the horizon like she expected it to swallow her whole. His ranch sat in a valley between two ridges, modest but well-kept. Clara climbed down from the wagon before he could offer help. She stood in the yard, looking at the house, the barn, the empty corral, waiting for him to tell her what came next. Jack had lived alone for 3 years, ever since his father died and left him the land. He'd grown comfortable with silence, with the rhythm of work and sleep and nothing else. He hadn't planned on a wife, especially not like this. He showed her to the spare room, small but clean. She nodded once and closed the door between them. Jack stood in the hallway, suddenly aware of how strange this was, how wrong it could go. That night he cooked beans and cornbread. Clara ate without tasting, her eyes on her plate. When she finished, she washed the dishes without being asked. Her movements were efficient, practiced. She'd done hard work before. Jack tried conversation, asked where she came from. She said east, asked if she had people. She said no. Asked if she needed anything. She said no again. He stopped asking. 3 days passed like that. Clara worked from dawn until dark. She cleaned the house, mended his clothes, tended the small garden behind the barn. She moved through tasks like they were punishment. Jack caught her crying once, standing by the well, her shoulders shaking. He turned away before she saw him. On the 4th morning, riders appeared on the ridge, 4 men watching the ranch. Jack recognized the horses. Brennan's crew come to see about their dead friend's killer. They didn't approach, just sat there, making sure Clara knew they were watching. Jack went inside and found Clara at the window, her face pale. She'd seen them too. He pulled his rifle from above the door and checked the load. Clara's voice came quiet behind him. "Is this because of me?" Jack looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since the courtroom. Her hands were clenched into fists. Her jaw was set. She wasn't afraid. She was angry. He told her the truth. "They want to scare you, make you think you're not safe here. But they're wrong. As long as you're on this land, you're under my protection. That's not charity. That's the promise I made when I stood up in that courtroom." Clara's eyes searched his face. "Why did you do that? You don't know me." "You don't owe me anything." Jack thought about that. Thought about the way everyone had turned away from her, the way the town had been ready to throw her away like she was nothing. He'd seen that before, in different ways. He'd been alone enough to know what it cost. "Because nobody else would," he said. "And because you deserved better than what they were offering." The riders stayed on the ridge until sunset, then disappeared. But Jack knew they'd be back. The threats started small. A fence cut in the night. Cattle driven off into the hills. Jack tracked them down and brought them back, but it took time. Time away from other work. Time that left Clara alone at the ranch. He taught her to shoot properly, not just point and pull like she'd done with Brennan, but aim and breathe and make the bullet count. She learned fast. Her hands were steady now. They ate dinner together each night, and the silence grew less heavy. Clara started talking in small pieces. About growing up in Chicago. About coming west to escape a father who drank. About working in a hotel where Brennan had cornered her in a hallway. She didn't apologize for killing him. Jack didn't expect her to. He told her about his father, a hard man who'd built this ranch from nothing and expected his son to do the same.
About learning to live with the quiet after his father's voice went silent.
About the weight of carrying on alone. Spring turned to summer. The garden produced tomatoes and squash. Clara made preserves, lining jars along the kitchen shelf. Small pieces of permanence. Jack fixed the roof, replaced fence posts, broke a young horse to saddle. They fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Then the barn burned.
Jack woke to Clara shaking his shoulder, her voice urgent. Fire.
He grabbed his boots and ran outside to find the barn engulfed, flames reaching for the sky. They worked together, hauling water from the well, but it was already too late. The structure collapsed in a shower of sparks. In the morning light, Jack found the kerosene can, empty, tossed in the grass. No accident. Clara sat on the porch steps, soot on her face, staring at the smoking ruins. "This is my fault," she said. "They're doing this because of me." Jack sat beside her. His hands were blistered from the bucket handles. Everything he'd stored in that barn was gone. Tools, saddles, winter hay. The loss was real, and it hurt. But when he looked at Clara, he didn't see blame. He said, "They're doing this because they're cowards, because they think they can break us. But they're wrong." Clara turned to him. Her eyes were red from smoke and crying. "Why are you still defending me? I've brought you nothing but trouble." "You could send me away and this would stop." Jack shook his head. "That's not how promises work. I told you I'd protect you. I meant it. Not just from them, but from the idea that you're not worth protecting." Something shifted in Clara's expression. The walls she'd kept up started to crack. She leaned against his shoulder just slightly, and Jack felt the weight of her trust. It was more than he'd expected. More than he knew how to handle. But he didn't move away. They rebuilt. Jack borrowed tools from his neighbor, Walt Patterson, a weathered rancher who'd heard about the fire and came offering help without asking questions. Walt brought his 2 sons, and together they raised a new barn frame in a week. Clara cooked for the workers, and Jack caught her smiling for the first time. Small, but real. The Brennan crew made one more move. They came at night, 4 riders heading straight for the house. But this time Jack and Clara were ready. They'd taken shifts watching, and Clara had positioned herself in the loft with Jack's rifle, while Jack waited by the front door with his revolver. The riders called out, demanding Clara come face them. Jack stepped onto the porch. "You're on my land. Leave now or don't leave at all." The leader, a thick man named Curtis, laughed. "You think you can take all 4 of us, Morgan?" The crack of Clara's rifle answered him. The shot took Curtis's hat clean off his head. The next round hit the dirt between his horse's hooves. The animal reared, and Curtis fought for control. Jack's voice was steady. "My wife's a good shot. Next one won't miss." "Your choice." They rode off cursing, but they didn't come back. Word spread that Jack Morgan's ranch wasn't an easy target, that his wife could shoot and wasn't afraid to. The threats stopped. Summer deepened into fall. Jack and Clara worked side by side, their conversations growing longer, their silences more comfortable. She laughed at his bad jokes. He noticed the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she concentrated, small things that added up. One evening after dinner, Clara asked him why he'd never married before. Jack considered the question, washing dishes while she dried. "I never found someone who felt like home," he said. "Never found someone who understood what it means to build something from nothing, to fight for it." Clara set down the towel.
"And now?"
Jack looked at her. The light from the lamp caught her face, and he saw strength there. Beauty too, but mostly strength. "Now I think I did." She stepped closer. "This marriage started as paper, as escape. But it doesn't have to stay that way." Jack reached for her hand. "It doesn't," he agreed, "if you want something real." "I do," Clara said. "I think I have for a while now." They stood in the kitchen of the ranch house, 2 people who'd started as strangers and become something more. Jack kissed her softly, and Clara kissed him back. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't desperate. It was solid, real. A foundation. Outside, the wind moved through the valley. The rebuilt barn stood strong. The garden had yielded its last harvest. Winter was coming, but they'd face it together. Jack held Clara close and thought about the promise he'd made in that courtroom. He'd claimed her when nobody else would. Not to save her, but because something in him recognized something in her. 2 people who understood what it meant to stand alone and choose not to anymore. That night, Clara moved her things from the spare room to Jack's room. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. because somewhere between the fire and the rifle shots and the quiet dinners, they'd become partners. Husband and wife, not just in name but in truth. They lay in bed together, Clara's head on Jack's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Jack asked. "For seeing me when everyone else looked away. For making a promise and keeping it. For giving me a home." Jack tightened his arms around her. "You gave me one too," he said. "I just didn't know I needed it until you got here. Winter came hard that year. Snow piled up past the windows, and the wind howled through the valley. Jack and Clara spent long days inside, keeping the fire burning, talking about everything and nothing. She taught him to read better, working through books by lamplight. He taught her to play cards, though she beat him more often than not. They made plans for spring. More cattle. A bigger garden. Maybe hiring a hand to help with the work. Jack talked about building an addition to the house. Clara blushed and said that sounded nice. Real nice. When the thaw came, they planted together. Jack broke the soil while Clara followed behind, dropping seeds in neat rows. They worked in rhythm, 2 parts of the same task. The garden would feed them through the next winter. The cattle would multiply. The ranch would grow. One afternoon in early summer, Walt Patterson rode up with news. Curtis and the last of Brennan's crew had been arrested in the next county for rustling. They'd be in prison for years. The threat was finally over. Clara received the news quietly. That night she told Jack she didn't feel relief exactly. More like she could finally breathe all the way. Like she could stop looking over her shoulder and just live. Jack understood. He'd felt that way too, the constant tension finally releasing. They celebrated by riding up to the ridge, the same one where the riders had watched them months ago. From there, they could see the whole valley. Their valley. Their home. Clara leaned against Jack, his arm around her waist. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Standing up in that courtroom?" Jack didn't hesitate. Not once. Not even on the worst days. She smiled. "Me neither. I thought I would. I thought I'd always feel like I was trapped. But this doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like freedom." Jack kissed her temple. "That's because it is. We built this together. Nobody gave it to us. Nobody can take it away." They rode back down as the sun set, painting the sky orange and purple. The ranch house glowed warm in the distance. Smoke curled from the chimney. Home. That night, Clara told Jack she was pregnant. The words came quiet over dinner, her hand resting on her stomach. Jack's fork clattered to his plate. He stared at her, processing. Then a grin spread across his face, wider than she'd ever seen. He stood and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off the ground. She laughed, truly laughed, the sound filling the kitchen. When he set her down, Jack cupped her face in his hands. "We're having a baby." Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. Happy tears this time. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Terrified," Jack admitted, "but also more excited than I've ever been." They spent the evening making plans, converting the spare room into a nursery, building a cradle. Clara worried about whether she'd be a good mother given everything she'd been through. Jack assured her she would be. She was the strongest person he knew. The months passed quickly. Clara's belly grew round, and Jack found himself constantly reaching out to feel the baby kick. He talked to the child through Clara's stomach, telling stories about the ranch, about the life they'd built. Clara would smile and run her fingers through his hair. Walt and his wife Mary came by often, bringing baby clothes and advice. The community that had once rejected Clara now welcomed her. She was Jack Morgan's wife, the woman who'd helped defend their ranch. She'd earned her place. When the labor started, Jack rode hard for Mary Patterson. She arrived quickly, calm and experienced, and sent Jack outside to pace. He wore a path in the dirt, listening to Clara's cries from inside. Every sound made his heart clench. He felt helpless, useless. Then a different cry cut through the night, small, sharp, insistent. A baby's cry. Mary appeared in the doorway, smiling. "You have a daughter, Jack, and your wife wants you." Jack stumbled inside. Clara lay in bed, exhausted and sweaty and beautiful, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in cloth. She looked up at him, her face glowing despite her tiredness. "Come meet your daughter." Jack approached slowly, afraid he might break something. Clara pulled back the cloth, revealing a small red face, eyes squeezed shut, mouth open in indignation at being born. Jack reached out with one finger, and the baby's hand wrapped around it. His heart cracked open. "She's perfect," he whispered. Clara leaned her head against his arm. "What should we name her?" Jack thought about everything that had brought them here. The courtroom, the promise, the long road from strangers to family. He thought about new beginnings and second chances. Hope, he said. Let's call her Hope. Clara smiled through tears. Hope Morgan? I love it. They sat together, the three of them, in the quiet of the ranch house. Outside, dawn was breaking over the valley. A new day, a new life. Everything they'd fought for, everything they'd built, came down to this moment. Jack looked at his wife and daughter and thought about the promise he'd made. He'd claimed Clara when nobody else would. Not as charity, not as rescue, as a promise that she deserved to be chosen, that she deserved a home. And she'd given him something in return, a family. A purpose, a reason to build something that would last beyond his own life. Hope would grow up on this ranch. She'd learn to ride and shoot and work the land. She'd know she came from people who fought for each other, who kept their promises. The weeks after Hope's birth were exhausting and wonderful. Jack learned to change diapers and walk the floor with a crying baby at 3 a.m. Clara recovered slowly, but she was strong. She nursed Hope while Jack cooked, or he held the baby while Clara rested. They took turns, shared the load, the way they did everything. Summer blazed hot. Jack worked the ranch while Clara tended Hope in the garden. In the evenings, they'd sit on the porch, passing the baby between them, watching the sunset. Hope grew fast, her eyes opening to reveal a color somewhere between Jack's blue and Clara's brown. She had Clara's dark hair and Jack's stubborn chin. One evening, a stranger rode up to the ranch. Jack tensed, his hand moving to his gun, but the man raised his hands peacefully. He was older, maybe 50, with a marshal's badge on his chest. Evening, the marshal said. Name's Henry Cole. I'm looking for Clara Hayes. Heard she might be here. Jack stepped forward, placing himself between the marshal and the house. She's Clara Morgan now. My wife. What's your business with her? Cole dismounted slowly. No trouble, son. I just wanted to tell her that the judge who gave her that choice in the courtroom, Judge Harmon, he's been removed from the bench. Turns out he'd been taking bribes, making deals with men like Brennan.
Your wife's case got reviewed.
She's been officially cleared of any wrongdoing. I brought the papers. Jack took the documents, scanning them quickly. Clara appeared in the doorway, Hope in her arms. What's happening? The marshal tipped his hat. Ma'am, I was just telling your husband that you've been cleared. The circuit judge reviewed your case and found you acted in lawful self-defense. You're free. Officially. Clara's eyes widened. She looked at Jack, then back at the marshal. I'm free. Yes, ma'am. Judge wanted me to deliver this personally, along with his apologies for what you went through. Brennan had a history. You weren't the first woman he'd hurt. Just the first one brave enough to stop him. After the marshal left, Clara stood in the yard holding the papers. Jack came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her in Hope. How does it feel? He asked. Strange, Clara admitted. I mean, I knew I didn't do anything wrong, but having it official, having someone say it out loud that I was right to defend myself, it's like a weight I didn't know I was carrying just lifted. Jack kissed her neck. You were always free, Clara. From the moment you pulled that trigger, you saved yourself. I just gave you a place to land. Clara turned in his arms. You gave me more than that. You gave me everything. Hope gurgled between them, demanding attention. They both laughed. Clara looked at their daughter, then at Jack. This is everything, she said. This right here, not the papers or the clearance. This family. That's everything. As autumn arrived, painting the valley in gold and red, Jack taught Clara to break horses. She was nervous at first, but her determination won out. She learned to read the animals, to move with them instead of against them. By October, she could gentle a wild horse better than most men Jack knew. They hired a young man named Billy, barely 18, to help with the heavy work. He was eager and strong, and he treated Clara with respect. Jack liked him immediately. Billy built a small cabin near the barn and became part of their operation. Hope took her first steps in November right there in the kitchen. Jack and Clara both scrambled to catch her, but she made it across the floor on her own, laughing at their panicked faces. After that, there was no stopping her. She toddled everywhere into everything, a tiny force of chaos and joy. Winter came again, but this time the ranch was more prepared. They had more supplies, more help, more of everything. Jack and Clara spent evenings planning for the future. They talked about buying more land, expanding the herd, maybe even building a small bunkhouse for seasonal workers. One snowy night, after Hope was asleep, Clara and Jack lay in bed together. She traced patterns on his chest with her finger. Do you remember what you said in the courtroom? She asked. When you stood up, Jack thought back. It felt like a lifetime ago. I said I'd claim you, that I'd take responsibility. Clara propped herself up on one elbow. You said more than that. You said you'd give me a home and a name and protection. You said you'd honor me as your wife even though we were strangers. Jack met her eyes. I remember. You kept every promise, Clara said. Every single one. And I want you to know that I don't take that lightly. What you did, standing up when nobody else would, it changed my life. It saved my life. Jack reached up to cup her face. You saved mine too. I was just existing before you came. Going through the motions. It gave me a reason to build something real. To be someone more than I was. They kissed, slow and deep. The kind of kiss that said everything words couldn't. Outside the wind howled, but inside they were warm. Safe. Together. Spring brought new calves and new life to the valley. Hope turned one, babbling her first words. She said Papa first, then Mama, then Horse, which made both her parents laugh. She was fearless, running through the grass, chasing chickens, getting into mud puddles. Jack watched Clara chase their daughter around the yard, both of them laughing, and his heart felt so full it might burst. This was what he'd promised her. Not just survival, but life. Real, messy, beautiful life. One afternoon, a wagon rolled up carrying a family from back east. They were lost, looking for directions to a homestead they'd claimed. Jack gave them directions and Clara invited them for dinner. They had 3 children, all under 6, and the parents looked exhausted but hopeful. As they prepared to leave, the mother took Clara's hand. Thank you for your kindness. It's hard, starting over in a new place, not knowing anyone. Clara smiled. I understand more than you know. This land can be harsh, but it can also be good. You just have to be willing to fight for it. After they left, Jack asked Clara if she missed Chicago, missed the city. She shook her head. That wasn't life. That was just surviving. This is living. Summer arrived hot and dry. A drought threatened the valley, but Jack had learned from his father. They rationed water, moved cattle to better grazing, and helped neighbors do the same. The community pulled together, and they all made it through. In August, Clara discovered she was pregnant again. Jack's reaction was just as joyful as the first time. Hope would have a sibling. The family would grow. They'd need that addition after all. As Clara's belly grew, Jack worked on expanding the house. Billy helped, and together they added 2 rooms. A bigger bedroom for them and a nursery for the new baby. Hope would get the spare room when she was older. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching Hope play in the yard, Clara said something that stuck with Jack. I never thought I'd have this. A family. A home. People who choose to stay because they want to, not because they have to. Jack took her hand. That's the thing about promises, Clara. They're only as good as the people who make them. We chose each other, and we keep choosing each other, every day. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. Every day, she agreed. The second baby came in March, another girl. They named her Grace, because that's what their lives had become. Undeserved favor. Second chances. Beauty from ashes. Hope was fascinated with her baby sister, constantly trying to help, constantly wanting to hold her. Jack and Clara took turns managing both children, exhausted but happy. The ranch thrived. The family grew. The promise held. Years passed in the rhythm of seasons. Jack's hair started to gray at the temples. Clara's hands grew calloused from work, but never lost their gentleness with their children. Hope and Grace grew into strong, capable girls who could ride and shoot and work as hard as any hand. Billy married a girl from town and brought her to the ranch. They had children of their own, and the ranch became more than just a business. It became a community, a family that extended beyond blood. Jack never forgot that day in the courtroom. Never forgot standing up when nobody else would. Never forgot the promise he made to a woman nobody wanted. But as he watched Clara teaching their daughters to plant seeds in the garden, as he listened to her laugh at dinner, as he held her each night, he realized something. The promise wasn't just something he'd kept. It was something they'd built together. Every day, every choice, every moment of standing together against whatever came. That was the real promise. Not a single moment of courage, but a lifetime of choosing each other. One evening, when Hope was 12 and Grace was 10, the family sat on the porch watching the sunset. The girls were arguing about something, the way sisters do. Clara was mending a shirt, Jack was smoking his pipe, content. Grace asked her father about the day he met her mother. It was a question she'd asked before, but Jack never tired of answering it. He told them about the saloon, the trial, the courtroom full of people who looked away. He told them about making a promise to a stranger who needed someone to stand with her. He kept the details age-appropriate, but he never hid the truth. Hope listened intently.
So you married Mama to save her from jail?
Jack shook his head. I married your mama because she deserved someone to choose her, and because I recognized something in her that I hadn't known I was looking for.
Strength, courage.
The kind of partner who makes you better just by being beside you. Clara smiled at him across the porch. The girls made gagging sounds at the romance, but Jack saw them exchange glances. They understood, even if they pretended not to. That night, after the girls were in bed, Jack and Clara stood in the yard looking up at the stars. The ranch was quiet, peaceful. Everything they'd fought for, everything they'd built, surrounded them. Clara spoke first. If you could go back to that day in the courtroom knowing everything that would come after, all the hard times and the struggles, would you still stand up? Jack didn't hesitate. Every time. 1,000 times. You're the best decision I ever made. Clara leaned into him. Not a rescue. No, Jack agreed. A promise. They stood together under the vast western sky, two people who had found each other when they needed it most, who'd built a life from nothing but determination and choice, who'd turned a desperate moment into a lasting legacy. The wind moved through the valley, carrying the scent of grass and earth and home. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The house behind them glowed warm with lamplight. Their daughters slept safe inside. The ranch stretched out around them, solid and real. Jack Morgan had claimed Clara Hayes when nobody else would. Not as charity, not as rescue. As a promise that she mattered, that she was worth fighting for, and she'd proven him right every single day since. That promise had become a marriage. The marriage had become a family. The family had become a life worth living. And neither of them would change a single moment of the journey that brought them here. They walked back to the house hand in hand, ready for whatever tomorrow brought. Because they'd face it together, the way they always had. The way they always would. That was the promise. That was everything.